Hi everyone, it's Roger and James here from the What's on Disney Plus podcast. In this week, we're going to be talking about Dolphin Reef coming to Disney Plus. We're going to be talking about Netflix and all the information that came out of there about all these people that are going to be unsubscribing, how Disney Plus isn't going to be featuring anything near the quality or quantity, and all loads of bits and pieces from Netflix. We're also going to be talking about some other bits and pieces from this last week on Disney Plus news. So let's just jump into all of that. So James, what have you been watching this past week? I'm sure there's one thing.
Well, yeah, there's one thing, but also to continue the trend from the last couple of weeks, all the things leading up to that one thing.
Yes.
I don't remember exactly where I left off last week, but let's just say I have finished watching every single Marvel MCU movie that has been released, period, including the one that came out this past week. Yeah. You had mentioned last week, of course, that was a major undertaking. And it's not something I would recommend for people who aren't like fully into it. Like, don't force yourself to do it. For me, it wasn't a chore at all. It was not a chore, just to enunciate properly. It was not a chore. I loved every minute of it. And it was fun to revisit a lot of the older movies. Ones that I hadn't seen in quite some time. And I think we'll get to this in a different segment, but I think that it actually did help with the viewing of Endgame because, no, I'm not even going to say why, because we'll talk about that stuff later.
We have decided this week we're going to take all the Avengers Endgame stuff that we're going to be talking about, and we're going to be talking about the Disney Plus shows and stuff, like all the Marvel stuff. We're going to do a separate episode that's going to go up on the Sunday. That's going to be full spoiler mode. So in this episode, we're not going to talk about the Avengers Endgame because there's so much out there that that could affect Disney Plus that I want to do all of that in one little episode, and I don't want to wait another week because I want to talk about Endgame. But so we're going to leave all the Avengers Endgame conversation for this podcast completely. There's going to be no mention of it more or spoilers, so you don't need to worry about it. But just doing in there. Other stuff I've been watching, just kind of continuing on with Star Wars, the Clone Wars on Disney Life. Not really I wouldn't really say I watched a huge amount this week. I don't know. It's just been one of them like busy weeks. Continuing on with a lot of the ABC shows. But we're probably not going to be kind of having too much more of that, which I'm going to explain a little bit more. Because during an event, Kevin Mayer, who is kind of the head chief over at the Disney Direct Consumer and International Department. So he's basically running Disney Plus, Hulu, Espn Plus, and all the international side of things. So he was at this event called the APOS in Bali in Indonesia, where all of the big chiefs of the media world all get together and they're all talking stuff, all trying to sort TV shows out. Lovely job if they all got sent out to a big, lovely resort out in Bali. Disney were sponsoring the lounge. They were there in presence. So he was out there and he did like a 20-minute talk. Unfortunately, they've not actually put that video out. But he did talk a little bit about Disney Plus, where he said this one thing about how they're looking at their sort of the way they're doing it all. So they said, if you're a fan of Disney, Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars, National Geographic, everything that flows through those brands will be on Disney Plus. Some will travel through other windows, but everything eventually will end up on Disney Plus. It's a 4-quadrant service, which I had to look up to find out what that means, and apparently it means appealing to all demographics. You won't find anything above a PG-13. Hulu is our general entertainment service, so everything from ABC, FX, the 21st Century Fox Television Studio, Freeform, Fox Movies will end up there, and we will continue to license from third parties. And in the US, we have ESPN Plus, so that's free independent services. I thought that was quite in some ways an easy step. There's some little fudge of what some of those things, but I thought that was quite a defined way of trying to explain the difference between the brands at the minute.
It's about as good a description or a split between them as you're going to get. Obviously, there's no good way to describe it, or at least not beyond the basics. But I think it was about as good as we're going to get. And yeah, there's some people who just, no matter how you explain it, aren't going to get it. And there's some people who are just going to be, oh, yeah, I totally
Yeah.
This is that, and that's this, and they don't meet, or they meet in
Yeah.
this little Venn diagram kind of way.
Yeah.
But yeah, he did a good job. I can't.
Yeah, there's some still issues there and some ambiguity between certain things. The concept of it coming through the brands of, like, say for example Marvel, is I was instantly, when I saw that, I was like, so Marvel's like Cloak and Dagger and Hulu and Runaways and things like that. It's like, well, they are Marvel brands going through Hulu. So this thing about other windows. Now, I don't know whether that means whether or not it's going through ABC television, whether or not it's going through Hulu, whether or not it's going through, I don't know, any other channel. And then the idea that it all eventually ends up back on Disney Plus, that kind of makes a little bit more sense. This idea that maybe things have to go through these. It was just, the way that he said that, kind of like, okay, that makes a bit more sense. It definitely feels like they're kind of, everything on those brands is now siphoned in their minds. The trouble is they've still got some legacy stuff that they're dealing with, but in their eyes, everything with those brands is going to be going through Disney Plus eventually. Whereas everything else, and it makes sense. There's some issues I do think with certain things from ABC and Freeform, which I think fit Disney Plus better than maybe Hulu. But and the same thing with Fox. But then there's been lots of discussion going on with Fox. Apparently, they've been canceling movies left, right, and center. They've been repositioning Fox so it's PG-13 and R-rated. That seems to be where they're pushing. And it's like, yeah, it looks to me like they're going, right, you're doing all the stuff that Disney's not doing, and that's all going to Hulu. And then we're gonna have the Disney doing all the family-friendly stuff. And then that goes to Disney. But it feels like they are positioning the company in that way, that they've got a dedicated like siphon.
Yeah, and we were kind of expecting that. You know, it makes sense for each of the brands to have a defined purpose, and defining them based on target market, not just in terms of demographics, but in terms of maturity of content or immaturity of content. You can definitely go both ways with the R-rated or even PG-13 rated stuff. So yeah, I don't think this is any surprise, but it's good to have them kind of lay it out as, yes, this is the basic plan, and there will always be exceptions.
Yeah,
but this is the basic plan, and I don't think anyone can really argue with that.
No, I mean the only one that still stuck out there was Freeform,
right?
Because like Freeform is this like weird channel of like half Disney Channel, half like teenage channel. So there's some shows there that maybe weren't suitable for Disney Plus, but there's a lot of stuff on that channel which does fit on there. But they've definitely seemed to be lumping that in with the ABC and the FX stuff. I think there's going to be some cross-pollination between the two anyway, but I think it was just a nice clear-cut idea of like, okay, this is going to be Hulu's filter and this is the Disney side. And I think it kind of makes sense. It's kind of almost feeling like if a show has the word Disney in the title, then it goes that way, and if it doesn't, it goes this way. And I think that's kind of a good way. I don't know, there's a lot of talk about Hulu this week as well, because Comcast had their financial results and they said there's no news about Hulu at the minute. And straight after that, CNBC then put out a note saying that there's talks going on between Disney and Comcast, which I have to put out that CNBC is owned by Comcast. So the fact that they broke their own, that they broke a kind of this backstage thing on their own company was like, okay, I don't know. There's a skeptic in me that kind of went, if it came from somebody else, I probably would have been a bit more inclined to do it. But the fact it came from within CNBC on the same day was like, okay.
Yeah, I can't actually really comment on that. Conflict of interest, so I can't really comment.
This is the thing, unfortunately, because James does work for Comcast, so that's the kind of issue really of, that's why he's not going to say much on this one, but I don't. There is this hope, yeah, so it's that kind of thing of, I don't think it's a conflict. I think it's just the fact that the NBC Comcast, you know, they're going to have a relationship where they're a little bit more in touch, and they probably were at the event to cover it, and so maybe that was just the way it was. There's talk of them like launching Sky News and stuff, so they are definitely going to be getting more into the news anyway. But generally as a whole, this idea of Hulu being sold to Disney, I think it's definitely a case of when rather than if Hulu has Disney have got plans for it. They want to do stuff with it. They are positioning their company that they want to have the two different sides of their streaming services, to Disney Plus and Hulu, are kind of going to run simultaneously, but offering different content. The fact that Disney Plus is going to be available within Hulu as well, if you subscribe, that kind of makes a lot of sense. And it wouldn't surprise me if it went the other way around as well. I don't know if you think that.
Yeah, I think my general impression was always that there probably wouldn't be at the beginning kind of a cross-pollination between the two, but it would get there eventually because it makes the most sense for Disney, because they want to make sure that you're aware that both of them are theirs. But so it sounds like it's going to happen not like truly in depth. I think it's going to be very, very minimal amount of cross connection, but more than I expected, at least in the beginning.
And I'm expecting the same thing with Espn Plus. I'm sure there's going to be a little link between it, because if they're going to be bundling them all together and offering discounts and stuff, it makes sense for them to do that. And I think that's going to be a key thing. The thing is really of when does Comcast sell? They're discussing at the minute of whether or not is it better to hold out now and try and get more money out of Disney because they know that Disney are going to want to pay for it, or do they just go, right, okay, let's just take the money now, let's get this thing sorted, let's take the money, put it back into paying off of what they paid for Sky and buying out Disney from that point of view, because they just, they had to buy them out of their Sky. And just generally, they've got lots of issues with finance themselves, with debt. So there's a kind of thing at the minute. They're trying to work out what's better for them in the long run. The trouble is Hulu can't really, because they've still got the power to veto stuff. So Hulu can't really grow or get any bigger without full-on control. Really, this has been the problem for Hulu the whole time, was all the time you had the four companies involved, they were never really able to move forward. Now Fox has gone into Disney, AT&T have sold theirs. Now there's only two people left, and one of them wants it. The other one kind of doesn't really want to, is looking at, Comcast is looking at streaming in a very different way. They still want it like the traditional television way, where you get adverts. They don't want a streaming subscription service. They then looking at it very old school. That's not necessarily a wrong way of looking at it, but they aren't looking at it the same way that Disney is.
No, I would say even I can't talk about that too much, but I would even say that that's not how they're looking at it. Comcast, you can very accurately say very many negative things about Comcast, but one thing that they are not is ignorant of the current situation when it comes to streaming and where viewers are going to. They've got the metrics that show how people watch, and they know that our generation and the younger generation are moving away from traditional cable, and they're moving to the streaming platforms, cable cutting platforms. And they know that traditional, trying to do, let's say, a Netflix style platform, but inserting traditional ads into it, just isn't going to work. So, yes, obviously they make a lot of money. They released their earnings call this past week as well. They make a lot of money off of advertising, traditional advertising, but they are fully aware that at some point that gravy train is going to stop, and they are preparing for it now. And that's about all I can say.
Well, what they are doing as well is over here in the UK, we have Now TV, which is run by Sky, which is a streaming service, which has FX, ABC stuff. It has National Geographic. It has lots of stuff. It's basically our cable version, and they've got that one. That team that built that, and they're taking that model, and they are prepping it for US launch. They want to take Now TV to the US, and also essentially I think the idea is that they're going to bring them, whatever it's going to be will be in the UK, and it will just be an international brand that they are looking at. So there's already a streaming service that they are working on that's already running in the UK. I subscribe to it. I watch all the time. They are looking to do that. So that's going to be some competition for Disney Plus anyway. But the whole thing really is this issue of Hulu, of when they sell it rather than if. They could hold on to it for a while and slow Disney down, but it's not really going to matter because Hulu is still continuing to go on anyway. But it does make a lot more sense, really, of how Disney are positioning Disney Plus and Hulu as separate things. A lot of talk, really, a lot of people going, oh, they should merge them in together and just go after Netflix one go. Disney have got a different strategy of offering that different. They want people to have multiple subscriptions. And ultimately as well, you look at it, if you get Hulu and Disney Plus, you're going to be playing about the same as Netflix anyway.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where Disney has to view Netflix as competition, of course, because they're in the same space, but they're not really going for the same audience. Yes, Netflix has a lot of good kid shows, stuff like The Dragon Prince and She-Ra and all this stuff that they've got available for younger audiences. But that's not really what their market is for. That's much more of a mommy and daddy have a Netflix subscription so that we can watch Stranger Things and the Marvel shows, obviously not anymore, but all of those shows. And then the bonus of She-Ra and Dragon Prince and How to Train Your Dragon and all that stuff. Whereas Disney's going the opposite direction, where it's more of, we're going for that younger middle generation. They will have all the shows. This is the package that you want to have to keep your kids entertained, depending on your views of screen time and stuff. And at the same time, it comes with The Mandalorian and WandaVision and all this stuff. So they're kind of going at it from the opposite angle. And sure, there's overlap, but Disney is banking on, we are the Disney properties. Yeah. We understand how we're marketing these Disney properties. Maybe not Star Wars, but that's a discussion for another day. And it's
a thing really, because I see it with my like nephews and stuff of, they have all the television, all the kids shows on Netflix. They sit there and watch it and they just churn through it and they just watch continuous stuff. The thing is, they are going to lose a lot of those brands. I do love the fact now that the idea of adding a plus to the name of the company. In the last week, Paramount Plus runs in one country. They've got that going. Nick Plus is just launching, I think, in Italy or Greece or something. There's like every country is now. It's just like, nope, you take your name and you put a plus to it, and that means it's your streaming service. And it's like becoming the standard way of offering It was just the fact that I saw two different companies this week put plus behind the end. It's like going, okay, this looks to be the way that they're going to be like associating their branding with these companies, and it just seems to be the way they're going. So, this big issue, it just makes sense in some way.
And then a couple of years ago, adding Stir or Flicks onto something was a big way of doing it too. The plus is much easier to copy. Netflix doesn't have something that maybe Flicks, because Flicks,
I don't know if you knew about the Disflix thing from a few years ago. That was something that got set up by a load of YouTubers with the idea of like setting up like all their Disney vlogs and Walt Disney stuff behind a paywall with their own streaming service. Didn't last long. I don't think it lasted like a week before that thing got shut down, and the reaction to it in the Disney community was not this positive thing. But nevertheless, going back to Netflix, so just got a few things here. There's been a couple of surveys and stuff that came out this week, where they're kind of going into this concept of how people are going to be like leaving Disney or leaving Netflix for Disney Plus. Apparently, according to this article, that if the content was pulled from Netflix, 23% of people could leave Netflix because of Disney leaving. 19% would cancel if Friends left, and 14% would left by The Office. This was from Geek.com.
I'm actually surprised that Friends over The Office. I hear more people going on about Office binging than Friends binging. But
well, I must admit, I must admit, see, I'm a big Friends. I was a big Friends fan back in the 90s. I don't think I've watched it in 10 years. So I'm definitely not a binge. The Office, I never kind of got into. But I think what this is, the main thing is here, what I'm looking at this as, is a lot of people have got used to watching traditional television, binge watching, and using it as like a comfort thing and just putting them on in the background and just watching reruns. And I think that's part of Netflix is what's going, is you're looking at this going, they are one of the biggest things that people are watching. And when they go, people might not stay around with Netflix because they don't want to watch originals. They want to watch stuff they're familiar with. So it definitely feels like, and there's like some people, that could be 9 million, 10 million people of Netflix could leave because they don't have all the stuff that they want anymore.
That's certainly a possibility. I do tend to not give very much credibility to surveys about what would a person do in situation X, mostly because we know most people think that they would be like, oh, if Netflix didn't have The Office, I would never have a Netflix subscription because all I watch is The Office. Yeah. At least half of those will continue to have a Netflix subscription. And whether or not that means they would also have a Disney Plus or anything like that. It's fun to see these polls, and it's definitely fun to see stuff about like Disney Plus being like, oh, we're taking a market share out of Netflix. Of course I want to see that. This is what we want to see, but at the same time, I'm like, let's wait for it to launch and see if people put their money where their mouth is. And most of them won't. Most of them will probably end up doing both for a little while, and then one will get canceled, but it'll depend largely on which one ends up having the stuff they want. And a lot of those people who are like, I only want the Netflix for The Office, go buy the DVDs, guys.
Yes.
They're there.
I was saying that we were having an entire conversation last night about what to do when we move into our new place with all our DVDs, and we're clearing them out. But it's that kind of situation, really, I feel, I think Netflix is about to go through a massive shift, not from just Disney, but from Warner Brothers and Comcast when they've got their streaming services there, when Netflix is no longer the go-to place for everything that you've had before. When you're going on there and going, and you're looking through stuff going, oh, where's all the stuff that I used to watch or want to watch? That's not there anymore because it's all going to have to be their own originals and exclusive stuff that they've purchased. And I think Netflix has built itself on that old way of watching old stuff, and there's a massive market for that are people watching it, and that's all going, and I think it's all chipping into this idea that Netflix is going to lose all that, and people are starting to realize that it's happening. It's going to be happening. Sometimes we're fully aware of this and been knowing about this for years, but a lot of people don't. They just go like they are complete, and I think it's becoming more aware that things are going to be leaving Netflix in the next year.
Yeah, and I mean to talk a bit more about that point, there is a lot of comfort to be had from watching shows or movies that you have already seen, and recent studies have shown that watching a show over and over again really doesn't diminish your enjoyment of it, assuming it was something you enjoyed in the first place. And I can speak to that with going back to the beginning of this episode. I just finished watching all the Marvel MCU movies from Iron Man up to Endgame, and I love them almost as much as I did the first time I saw them, some of them 10 years ago. And I totally get people wanting to watch The Office or Parks and Rec or I Love Lucy, some of those old classics, even the old black and white stuff. There are people who still watch them just because it's comforting to have that connection to it. And we all have at least a couple of movies or shows that we could just be like, I'm just going to watch this. I don't even need to watch it. I know what's going on. I can look at any given moment and go, oh yeah, I know exactly what's happening right now. But we all have those shows.
Yeah. And for me, it's like Back to the Future, Star Wars, or those kind of movies that just jump in. But that is the key thing, really, of that pulling it in on it. I mean, again, all these surveys and stuff, we don't know what's going to happen when it all comes in. Netflix are looking at this as the more streaming service that are around, the more people are going to cut the cord. And then they're all looking at people going, yeah, you're all going to subscribe to 3 or 4 platforms. So you might as well, they know that this is coming and people are going to have to, there's not going to be that, there's going to be that minority going, I only subscribe to one and I want everything on one. That they all know that you're going to subscribe to multiple ones. They all just want to make sure they get your subscription. And that's going to be the way you're looking at it. And ultimately, that's going to be the key point that they're going to be moving on with. Disney themselves, Kevin Mayer at that event in Bali said that they're not looking at Netflix as necessarily a competition, but they're only apparently having 20% of the content that's on Disney Plus will be of what there is on Netflix. And that again comes down to this issue of Disney have got quality over quantity, and that's the way that it's being pushed over at the minute. Is that there was another article that came up with some great information here, going through that there's Disney Plus will only have 16% of Netflix television series, but this is all based on like a couple of months ago. So things are all going to change when everyone starts losing stuff. And Disney Plus will only have 12% of Netflix movies because they've got 4,000 movies. Disney Plus will only have 500. But if you look at this chart, you can see here, yeah, Disney Plus is way down the low here, but Hulu is really high. Now, I'm going to think that Hulu's are going to start dropping off as NBC and Warner Brothers start pulling their content off there eventually. And the same thing's going to happen to Amazon Prime and Netflix. But you're going to start seeing this thing where you're going to have HBO, CBS. This is going to be the line, really, of where you're going to see content.
Yeah, and it's like you said, quality over quantity. We don't yet know fully what the quality would be. Obviously, we hope the quality would be high. But even with, let's say, the comfort television shows, while they might not have The Office or Parks and Rec or something like that, they do have stuff like Modern Family, plus some classic TV shows that we grew up with. And if they have enough of those shows that people just want to kind of binge watch, half watch on in the background kind of stuff, then that's enough. And if they have enough of those shows, then they'll get enough subscribers.
So the thing here is this is like the movies under the video on demand stuff with Amazon Prime of how many movies they've got compared to Disney Plus and Netflix. Now the thing is with that Amazon Prime is that seems to be they've really gone after the movies, and I wonder how much of that will start dropping off once the companies start pulling their content, like Warner Brothers and Universal and Disney, because they're the big players in movies. You just what's going to be left. There's going to be like. There's not many big studios left after that happens. But what also goes on here is where they were looking at the titles of how people view them. CBS, Disney, and HBO are in this bracket where like 90% of people like what's going on. Where Netflix is way down the bottom here on the charts, where again generally the quality comes down to when they look at these movies and TV series. Disney movies are then generally viewed much higher by the actual people.
Let's be fair, that vertical axis is a little bit misleading with the numbers, because the Disneys are sitting up in the, let's say 86 to 90%, whereas Netflix is sitting in the 78 to 83%. Yeah, that is let's say a 10% difference. But 80% is still pretty solid. It is still nice to see Disney, floating up there, but they definitely picked a misleading vertical axis.
Yes. It's this kind of thing of them sort of saying Disney is focused on quality over quantity for the Disney Plus launch slate. Perhaps unsurprisingly for the new service, Disney Plus will carry a significant smaller lineup of titles than Netflix, Amazon, or Hulu. But they say that every Disney title will need to guarantee an audience, but the entirety of Disney and Fox's library to choose from, that's very achievable. And I think that's definitely a key point here and I think this is the key thing for, you look at something like Avengers Endgame or Dumbo or Aladdin, instantly it has a bigger pull and deemed as more quality than a movie that's come to Netflix, because I'm starting to associate Netflix movies with the concept of straight to video. But they there's not what I would call big blockbusters. They don't doing big blockbusters. They're doing what you would pick up at a video store in the old days of they aren't the big blockbusters.
Right. I'm not sure I'd put them necessarily on like the old TV movie straight to video release. They are typically higher quality than those. But yeah, especially recently, a lot of their movies have been Ones that have been stuck in development hell for a while. You know, they released Triple Threat, which was a Ben Affleck movie, but it had been handed between directors and writers and stars for a decade, give or take. Maybe not quite that long, but a long time. Bird Box, of course, that had a long development cycle. But they do, or at least they did try for a little while to go for some more like blockbuster-esque titles, stuff like Bright.
That was the one I was just thinking of. Which the trouble is, and this is that difference of, to me, it's something like Bird Box is a movie I wouldn't go and see at the cinema because I'd wait till it comes out on video. Well, that's and that's what people do because. You know, with those big budget movies, people go see them at the cinema. People hold off, and when they turn around and go, "Well, next, Bird Box was watched by this many people," it's like, yeah, but that's not really a true. Netflix have only started sharing their data now that there's competition around. They didn't do this, they don't sit there and go, "Well, actually, the latest Marvel movie on Netflix is actually pulling in the same numbers." They're not telling you that information. It's only about their exclusive, they are picking out what content, what information they're wanting to tell people.
And also, let's make up numbers. Say 3 million people watched Bird Box or Bright or one of those. There is a very big difference between 3 million people being at home and going, "What do I want to watch tonight? Oh, this new Netflix," because you're already paying for it. You don't pay extra for Bright or Bird Box or Triple Threat. Whereas if you want to go see Endgame or Episode 9 or one of those things, for the moment, you have to go to the theaters. You have to get out of your chair. You have to go drive or walk to the theater. You have to pay, and let's be frank, absurd amount of money to see the movie. And it's this whole effort involved. It's a much different thing to be at home with Netflix or Disney Plus or Hulu. And the impact is different. And I do actually think that stuff like Triple Threat are better off at Netflix because I wouldn't go pay $15 to go see it in the theater, but I'd be happy to pay a $9 or $13 monthly fee to have access to the movie because it's like, yeah, it entertained me for an hour and a half, however long it was.
Yeah. But I mean, I do it all the time. You see a movie advertised at the cinema and you kind of go, okay, I'll wait. And you just make that instant reaction on that trailer going, yeah, I'll either rent it or I'll wait for it to be streamed. And we all make that decision unless you go to see every movie at the cinema, which is very rare. But people make that thing, and I think this is where this idea of, at the minute, everybody's looking at Netflix of going, you are the king, you are the thing, and there's all these people coming in underneath trying to chip away at you. And I think this story of Netflix versus everybody else is a story of like, that's what people are, it's driving people to look at it. It gets people's attentions. And I think that's the key thing here. Everything is going to change. And, it's just one of those things of, Disney aren't going to have the same amount of titles on there as Netflix. But again, what are you going to more likely going to watch when Disney are dropping a weekly or say a fortnightly new movie onto Disney Plus? The conceived motion is going, well, that's a big blockbuster. Whereas, and they're going to be dropping all their own Disney original stuff. We know they're going to be lower budget stuff going straight to Disney Plus. They know, they've already told us that. We're not looking at Noelle and Timmy Failure and going, those are big blockbuster movies. They wouldn't have been. They wouldn't have pulled in $1 billion at the box office and been the highest grossing movie of all time. We knew that. We know that's not the case. But we know like Lion King is going to be epic at the cinema, but they wouldn't have had that budget if it was a Disney Plus. It would have been that Mowgli movie that got shoved over to Netflix at the last minute because they realized it wasn't going to do very well at the cinema.
Although apparently it was a pretty good movie. That was on the list of ones I wanted to see at some point. Andy Serkis involved, I think, on that. But yeah, having Disney Plus or Netflix or Hulu or CBS Access, whatever, gives them a chance to do these lower budget movies that would not see the light of day otherwise, or would have previously been the direct to video TV movie, whatever. But these are, I feel, for the most part, obviously there's duds here and there, higher quality than what we grew up with in the 90s and the early 2000s, especially with all of the Disney sequels, you know, Cinderella 2 and Little Mermaid 2 and all that stuff. And because that there's a guaranteed income stream one way or another, you know, it doesn't actually matter if people watch these movies or not. The Disney Plus income is coming in. That would impact whether a sequel would be made. But these movies can have their budget. They can decide what the budget is in advance, and they don't have to worry about do we want to print 100,000 DVDs of this, 200,000, 2 million. They can just be like, no, we're just throwing it straight up on Disney Plus, and people will watch it or they won't, and we can make future business decisions based on what they do.
I mean, I'm just looking here on a very different tangent, really. Of this past couple of weeks, I fired up my Xbox, and I've been playing Xbox Games Pass, which is a monthly subscription where Microsoft put about 100 plus games on there, and they put all their first party originals. I've been playing a game called Crackdown 3. Now that game got reviewed pretty poorly. It was 50s,
60s, I think.
Yeah, 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10. Generally deemed quite average, not worth spending $50 on. I've been playing it. I completed it last night. But it's that thing of, because it was, I only paid, you know, I got a cheap deal for a year's membership, a couple of bucks for the year. I feel I got my money's worth and I enjoyed it. And because I didn't spend that money on it, and it's that kind of thing of these subscription services of you are willing to accept less quality when you're not paying the full price for it. When you're paying the full price for it, you want that, you know, if I paid £60 for it for the digital version like I did with Red Dead Redemption, I would have been more inclined to say this wasn't up to par with it. But on the streaming service of that monthly subscription, I was like, that's fine. I was fine with it. And this is where you are going to see this level of quality. And I think, you know, this whole thing of Disney versus Hulu versus Netflix versus Amazon versus ABC Plus versus Warner Brothers versus Comcast, we're all going to get used to jumping in and out, finding out what's pulling you in. Disney are going to be using nostalgia and brands to pull people in on their networks. That's the way they look at it. That's how they're planning to use those brands. You can see with Hulu, they're going to start using Fox movies because they're going to start seeing the same thing happening in things like Breakaway or Breakthrough that just came out in cinemas this month. That will be coming to Hulu eventually. They've got a year issue as well with existing deals going on with them. But that content filter is going to be going down that line, and we're just going to get used to. We'll just get used to this new system. But I think the main thing a lot of people are looking at is quality over quantity. Would you rather have 4,000 movies, all of which are, you know, I mean, the thing is, as well as I disagree a little bit with the numbers, because I know when I'm looking through like Amazon Prime's movies, there are millions, there seems to be thousands of movies in other languages. And it's like, that's not really, yes, they've got them there and it's great for those regions. And I hope that Disney Plus do have that kind of thing. But that's not really, if you got 2,000 Bollywood movies on Amazon Prime, that really doesn't mean anything to me if I'm never going to watch them.
That's true. And Netflix has the same thing here in the States, where they've pulled in a lot of Asian content, a lot of Bollywood, a lot of South Korea, a lot of Chinese, I think. And that's fine. They're targeting an audience with those, just as Amazon Prime is targeting that in your neck of the woods. And they're probably doing it here. I don't keep very close track of what Amazon Prime is, though I do want to see, was it Hannah? The TV series?
Yeah, I've watched 2 episodes of that.
I do want to check that one out, but I don't really monitor what's coming on Amazon Prime most of the time. But yeah, but that's going to, well, that really actually won't happen. I was going to say it would, but they've got, what is it called? Hotstar. Yes. I knew it had Star in it, but they've got Hotstar for India. So we're probably not going to see much cross-pollination on that. We might see Korean titles. We might see Chinese titles. I know Disney very much wants to get into the Chinese market. There have been rumors of recent movies that have had significant changes to them because they wanted to make it palatable to the Chinese government, which are the gatekeepers.
Well, this is the thing. Disney Life actually did launch in China as well as the UK, but the Chinese government pulled it because they viewed that it wasn't they had problems with it in China, and they had to pull it from China. So they've already had a little bit of a test bed. But I'm actually going to bring in a little bit of information here from Kevin Mayer from this event over in Bali this week, because they really want to go after Asia. They are serious about it. They are talking about we are focused on Asia as one of our growth developers. It's super important to us. Local content is the winner in these markets. We have a great global content, but if we're going to be a big player in these areas outside of India, local content is crucial to growing not only our direct-to-consumer business, but our traditional business. We are viewing India as a guidepost. They are one of the big key things that they're doing now is they're not lumping in the whole of Asia all in to one big bowl, because that's what they were doing in the past. They were they kind of treated the whole of Asia as literally just one thing, and it's different. You know, in Singapore is different to Vietnam, and Vietnam is different to you know, China and to Japan and stuff. They are looking at each one individually and planning differently for that. They're doing the same thing with Europe. We're trying to get different content for us all. They are realizing now, and this is why Disney have set this up now, that where you've got parks and consumer products producing content, you know, producing experiences and produce. You've got the media side of things, which are the television and the studios, and then you've got direct to consumer and international to sell it. And they are literally now, they've just lined their business up that the Disney Plus comes under the, we've made this stuff, now we're going to sell it. They're kind of moving, like the creative side is doing one thing, and then the selling people are now one part of it. And they've definitely moved their divisions around because they are looking at international now as much more important. Disney have always been global, but I think they realize that they can't rely on the US as as just their main boat. There's like billions of other people that they could be selling to, and they need to utilize it a lot better.
I mean, I don't get it. India, China, these are tiny countries. There aren't that many people there at all. It's a tiny market. No, yeah, it would be the same as going over to Europe and saying, well, Germany, France, Spain, and Yugoslavia, they're all European, so they all have the same tastes, right? They, you know, all of them, they like the same things. They have the same basic history. I mean, it's Europe. They all have the same history in Europe, right? And that's how we've been treating Asia, or companies have been treating Asia for decades, if not centuries. And no, that's not the case. And in fact, especially Korea, South Korea, China, Japan, there's a couple millennia of very, very strong history between them, and they're very different markets.
And also, as well as that, we're all, you know, they're all speaking different languages. They've all got different histories and stuff. It's, you know, the fact that they are looking at this now, and also the big issue here as well as now that they are, so I would essentially say they're looking at India and China and going, well, actually, these people have got money. Because I think there was almost that like stereotypical view of going, well, we don't launch over there because they're not as, it's like American companies looking down and going, oh yeah, they're not spending it, they haven't got any money, so they're not worth worrying about. We'll just send bits to me. So now they're looking at, oh, they've got money, they're subscribing to Netflix, oh, we want that too. And I think now they are, you know, it's that thing of, you know, China and India's and all these other countries, all there, you know, everyone's catching up. Everyone's kind of on the same level playing field now of like this whole idea of, well, that country's poor and this country isn't. You know, they are looking at Asia. They are completely ignoring South Africa. I mean, they don't seem to be looking into that area at all in regards to the direct-to-consumer. And, you know, but they are definitely focused on Asia. And I think they're looking at Europe as they've already kind of got that stuff mainly sorted. But Asia is a big market, and they are looking at what they did with India, and also looking even within India of there's different areas within India of speaking different languages and stuff, of realizing you know, Hotstar have got 300 million subscribers or users. I don't know if they're subscriber or users. Like, that's big numbers. And if they're paying a monthly subscription, it all adds up. And you know, Disney, that's why Disney Plus is looking to go global. If they, you know, they can pull in 160, 170 million subscribers, like, you know, that's where they're going to pick it up. And that's ultimately going to help everybody. Everyone's going to get more content because everyone's viewing. This whole idea that everything needs to get separated off is going to start disappearing over time.
Yeah, the success of the platform really is kind of dependent on how many people can do it. And that sounds like an obvious thing. Obviously, it can't be successful if there are not that many people. But what I mean is it kind of ends up in a death spiral. If you don't get enough subscribers, then you don't get a return on revenue to create new content, quality content anyway. Which means you don't get more subscribers because there's no content to bring subscribers, which means you're getting less content, which means less subscribers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very important for them to hit out of the gate with a large pool of subscribers, and it can't be restricted just to America or even just America. And by America, I mean North America, and Europe. That's the market is going global, and you can't ignore the billion people in India and the billion people in China.
We're all communicating and we're all seeing stuff, globally now. I mean, Hulu is just in the US. They're not even in Canada. They're not anywhere else. That's why they're looking to expand. But enough of that. Let's go on to the last topic for the day. Was this one kind of got announced, and it was a kind of, I wouldn't necessarily say it was a big surprise, but it kind of, I wasn't surprised, but I was surprised. Disney announced DisneyNature's Dolphin Reef is going to be coming to Disney Plus on launch on November the 12th in the US. It's a documentary movie with Natalie Portman directing it, all about a Echo called Dolphin, which anyone from the 80s will probably no doubt remember Echo the Dolphin on the Sega Genesis. I know I did. And so there's this dolphin, and it's around a reef, and Natalie Portman is doing it. It sounds great. Disney Plus exclusive, and they confirmed that penguins will be coming in 2020. I thought it might have arrived before Christmas, but maybe now that with Dolphin Reef arriving, they want to push that back a little bit because to give them both a bit of room, which makes a bit of sense. But originally, Dolphins by DisneyNature was going to be released last year, and it got pulled at the last minute. Now, the movie has now been given a rebrand, but when you look at the description about a dolphin called Echo that lives on a reef, it's the same thing with Natalie Portman was also narrating the last one. They just rebranded it, chucked it in, like given it a rename so it doesn't technically count as Dolphins. It did get released in France last year as a movie called Blue. So the movie has actually already been, they probably had a different narrator and stuff, but I love the fact that DisneyNature have come straight out, and I think we'll see this more. I don't know if Penguins will they continue to do these movies in the future, or will they be Disney Plus exclusives? Because Penguins, I think, pulled in about 5-6 million. It didn't pull in a lot of numbers over Earth Day.
Yeah, this is exactly what we were talking about earlier in the show, though, is this is not the kind of movie that I would necessarily go to a full theater experience. We talked about this, I think, last week with Penguins. Yeah. This isn't something I would necessarily go to the theater, especially with the current prices at theaters. But I would absolutely love to watch this on Disney Plus. And I think this is the right move for this, even alongside Nat Geo. Whether or not they kind of keep DisneyNature going or everything just gets folded into National Geographic's irrelevant. But this allows them to make these documentaries and release them and not worry about do we have to produce, how many film reels do we have to produce? I know it's all on USB now, but they don't have to worry about the physical parts of it. They don't have to worry about licensing agreements with the various theaters. They don't have to concern whether they will make their money back in theater revenue. Now, these could also end up at IMAX theaters, at museums. That's very popular here in the States, especially in the Smithsonian area. But this lets them create these with the security of knowing that an audience will watch it and they'll get their return on investment on it. Because I've got to admit, I will probably end up watching a lot of the Disney nature stuff as well as National Geographic's on Disney Plus, just because they make great little time fillers for half an hour or an hour.
I can't wait to see a few of them because they've only got a few of them on Disney Life. They like we've said before, they're not free. They're actually made in France. I think they're made by the French because the DisneyNature is based in France. So I actually think that they will continue to make stuff because it will help towards their European directive of having to make content in Europe to go on a streaming service in Europe. So actually, there's a reason why you're going to see a lot. There are TV shows and stuff made in different countries because it helps fulfill regional distribution contracts with the governments and stuff. So I think DisneyNature ain't going to go anywhere because that'll all help towards going, oh, well, we'll make this movie in France, or we make this movie. You're going to have different things going on. But I think this was a great move. Was surprised of the, like we literally said last week, you're going to watch this PR beat just keep drumming, and it was like, I haven't heard anything. So just before Avengers Endgame, oh, here's another Disney Plus thing. We've got a big event taking place today in California Adventure, with big Disney Channel stuff being, there's loads of stars being in Disneyland today, and there's going to be panels, and we're expecting lots of information, and all that content will all be coming to Disney Plus, live streaming, things like this. Yeah, there's going to be lots of information coming out of Disney Channel, and that's going to be something that's going to continue to build up as well. But yeah, so I think that pretty much wraps up the news from this week. Like I said, we are going to be doing a bonus episode where we're going to be talking about Marvel. That'll be out on Sunday, and that will be going all in depth. So we're getting 2 episodes this week. We're rather, because we thought that would be a bit more sense. But if you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe on our YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe on the audio platforms if you want to listen to this podcast each week on there. Make sure you go check us out over at whatsondisneyplus.com. Like us on Facebook and Twitter, etc. James, where can they find you?
You can find me at heroiclegacy.com.
And on that note, guys, thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back soon. Later.